The Velthari armada stretched across 3 star systems, their crystalline warships glinting like deadly jewels against the cosmic void. For 8 centuries, they had conquered every species they encountered, their quantum phase weapons reducing entire civilizations to molecular dust. No force in the galaxy had ever made them retreat, until today. Admiral Kexathera stood motionless on the bridge of the flagship Infinite Sorrow, her 6 eyes fixed on the scanner display that showed an impossibility. A single vessel, smaller than their smallest escort craft, hung in the darkness between them and Earth's solar system. The human ship appeared to be constructed from primitive metals and composites, yet it had somehow emerged from nowhere, materializing without triggering their quantum sensors. "Magnitude scan complete, Admiral," reported Navigator Ithkiel, his voice carrying the tremor that had infected the entire bridge crew. "The vessel measures approximately 200 meters in length. Mass readings are inconsistent. Define." "Inconsistent," Kexathera commanded, her primary arms gripping the command rail. "The mass fluctuates between 18,000 tons and—" Ithkiel paused, recalibrating his instruments. 13.7 billion tons. Silence fell across the bridge like a suffocating blanket. Even their most advanced dreadnoughts barely exceeded 3 million tons. The readings were impossible, yet their instruments had never failed them. "Weapons configuration?" Kexathera asked. "None visible, Admiral. No energy signatures matching known weapon systems. The hull appears to be comprised of simple iron titanium, alloys with some sort of substance coating the exterior." The Admiral's tertiary eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. The human vessel, if it truly was human, maintained perfect position relative to their fleet, as if anchored in space itself. It made no aggressive moves, transmitted no communications, yet something about its presence made her carapace crawl, with instinctive dread. "History archives," she commanded. "Cross-reference all encounters with human vessels." The data flowed across her neural interface in seconds. Humans were classified as a primitive species, barely having achieved interstellar travel within the last 2 centuries. Their weapons technology relied on crude kinetic projectiles and basic energy systems. They possessed no quantum manipulation capabilities, no phase shift defenses, no consciousness transfer technology that allowed their warriors to survive ship destruction. They were, by all accounts, insignificant. "Admiral," communications officer. Zilandra's voice cracked with confusion. "We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. It's audio only. Ancient electromagnetic spectrum. Display it." A single voice filled the bridge, speaking in the universal trade language with an accent that marked it as definitively human. "This is Captain Zerion Kaidel of the Earth Defense Vessel Pandora's Gift. You have 3 minutes to withdraw from this system, or I will be forced to demonstrate why my species survived our own homeworld." Kexathera's mandibles clicked in what passed for Velthari laughter. "One ship! One primitive ship threatens the Infinite Armada?" But even as she spoke, her tactical officer's urgent whisper reached her auditory receptors. "Admiral, the mass readings just spiked to 47 billion tons. The gravitational distortion around that vessel is beginning to affect our navigation systems." For the first time in her 300-year military career, Admiral Kexathera felt something she had never experienced in battle: uncertainty. The human ship hung in space like a predator pretending to sleep, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all being watched by something far more dangerous than it appeared. 2 minutes remaining, came the calm human voice. The countdown had begun. Admiral Kexathera's decision came swiftly, born from 8 centuries of unchallenged conquest. No single vessel, regardless of its mysterious properties, could threaten an armada that had reduced entire star systems to cosmic dust. "Battle formation, Caleth 7, she commanded. "Quantum Lance batteries full charge. That human wishes to demonstrate their species' survival instincts, we shall provide them with an educational opportunity." The Velthari fleet moved with practiced precision, their crystalline ships realigning into a devastating offensive configuration. 64 dreadnoughts formed the primary assault wave, their quantum lances beginning to glow with barely contained destructive energy. Behind them, 300 support vessels prepared to mop up whatever remained of the presumptuous human craft. Captain Zarion Kydel watched the alien formation shift through the Pandora's Gift's modest view screen. His weathered hands remained steady on the controls, though his crew of 7 moved with the tense efficiency of those who understood exactly what they were carrying. Captain, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vex Andra Wraith, spoke quietly. All systems show green. The containment field is stable at 97%. Zarion nodded, his gray eyes never leaving the approaching armada. Engine readings, Mordain? Chief Engineer Mordain Sekthar's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Drive system optimal, sir. The quantum tunneling array is synchronized with the payload. If we have to use it... He didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen if they used it. 45 seconds to weapons range, announced Navigator Keyleth Vordan. Zarion activated the communications array one final time. Velthari fleet, this is your last warning. What you perceive as a single human vessel is something far more significant than your tactical analyses suggest. Withdraw now, and both our species can continue to exist in this galaxy. Admiral Kexthara's response crackled through the void. Human arrogance will be corrected with precision. Prepare to observe the fate of all who challenge the Velthari Infinite Armada. Weapons range in 10 seconds, Keyleth reported. Zarion's finger hovered over a single red button on his command console, a button that had never been pressed in the 2 years since the Pandora's Gift had been commissioned. Around him, his crew made their final preparations, checking harnesses and activating personal protection fields. Sir, Vexandra's voice was barely above a whisper. Are we really going to do this? Zarion studied the vast alien fleet bearing down on them, each vessel capable of annihilating a city. His thoughts turned to Earth, to the colonies scattered across 37 systems, to the 3 billion humans who had no idea that their continued existence might depend on what happened in the next few minutes. The choice was theirs, he said simply. The Velthari dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously, 64 streams of quantum-phased energy converging on the tiny human vessel. The combined firepower could have cracked a moon, but as the devastating barrage reached the Pandora's Gift, something impossible happened. The energy simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, but frozen in space around the human ship like deadly aurora displays, the quantum streams hanging motionless in violation of every known law of physics. What in the name of the void? Admiral Kexthara began. Mass readings now show 216 billion tons, her tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. Admiral, that's impossible. Nothing that small could... I know what's impossible, Kexthara snarled. Fire everything. Every weapon, every ship, maximum output. As the Velthari fleet unleashed its full fury, Captain Zarion Kydel's hand moved to the red button. Forgive us, he whispered and pressed it. The universe hiccuped. That was the only way Admiral Kexthara could describe what happened when the human ship changed. One moment, the Pandora's Gift was absorbing their entire fleet's combined firepower like a cosmic sponge. The next, space itself seemed to bend around the vessel as reality rewrote itself in ways that made her consciousness recoil in primal terror. The human ship began to unfold, not mechanically. The transformation defied physics entirely. The vessel's hull separated into impossible geometries, revealing glimpses of something that hurt to perceive directly. Kexathara's 6 eyes struggled to process what she was seeing as sections of the ship existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, stretching through space-time like a flower blooming across the fabric of existence itself. "Admiral," her science officer's voice carried the hollow tone of someone whose understanding of reality had just been shattered. "I'm reading energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The vessel's internal structure appears to be folded space, compressed dimension. It's like they've somehow contained an entire pocket universe within that hull." The Pandora's gift continued its metamorphosis, and with each passing second, its impossible mass readings climbed higher. 200 billion tons, 500 billion. The numbers ceased to have meaning as the ship's gravitational field began affecting the positioning of nearby asteroids. Captain Zerion's voice cut through the chaos with unnatural calm. "Velthari Fleet, you are witnessing humanity's greatest achievement and greatest shame. What you see before you is not a weapon of war. It is a weapon of extinction. We call it the Nexus Drive." On the bridge of the infinite sorrow, every instrument began screaming warnings. The fabric of space around the human vessel was becoming unstable, quantum fluctuations rippling outward like waves in a pond. "Explain yourself, human," Kexathara demanded, though her voice carried none of its former authority. "Your species' archives likely contain no record of our homeworld's condition when we achieved interstellar flight," Zerion replied. "Earth was dying, Admiral. Not from war or disease, but from something far worse. We had broken the fundamental forces that held our reality together. Experiments in quantum manipulation, attempts to harness zero-point energy, decades of scientific hubris that nearly tore our planet apart at the subatomic level. The Pandora's gift had now expanded into a configuration that seemed to exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Velthari instruments couldn't even calculate its true size anymore. Sensors simply returned error messages when attempting to map its boundaries. "The Nexus Drive," Zerion continued, "represents our solution. We learned to contain the broken pieces of reality itself, to carry them with us as both power source and ultimate deterrent. This ship doesn't just travel through space, it carries a fragment of collapsed space-time, a piece of our homeworld's dying quantum substrate." Admiral Kexathara felt her command authority crumbling as she began to understand the implications. "You're threatening to weaponize a dimensional collapse." "Not threatening, Admiral. Warning. The Nexus Drive doesn't fire projectiles or emit energy beams. It simply releases the constraints holding reality together in a localized area. The effect spreads at the speed of light, consuming everything, in its path until the quantum cascade burns itself out." "How localized?" Kexathara's voice was barely a whisper. Lieutenant Vexandra's voice came through the communications channel, thick with regret. "The last time we tested a Nexus Drive, it consumed a star system. 13 planets, 4 asteroid belts, and the star itself. Complete atomic dissolution across a sphere roughly 8 light hours in diameter." The bridge fell silent except for the constant warnings from overtaxed instruments. Kexathara's tactical display showed her fleet's positions relative to the still-transforming human vessel, and she realized with growing horror that they were all well within the potential blast radius. "The drive is at 60% expansion," Zerion announced. "At 100%, the quantum containment fields will destabilize whether I want them to or not. You have perhaps 4 minutes to begin your withdrawal before the process becomes irreversible." For the first time in her species' recorded history, a Velthari admiral faced a choice between retreat and certain annihilation. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders that would either save their civilization or preserve their honor. The countdown continued with mechanical precision, and space itself held its breath. Admiral Kexathara stared at the tactical display where 800 years of Velthari military doctrine crumbled into irrelevance. The human vessel had grown to encompass a volume of space larger than her entire fleet, its impossible geometry casting shadows that fell in directions that didn't exist. Every sensor array screamed warnings about quantum instabilities, dimensional fractures, and gravitational anomalies that would have been dismissed as equipment malfunctions under any other circumstances. "Fleet status report," she commanded, her voice maintaining the iron discipline that had carried her through 3 centuries of conquest. 87% of our vessels are showing critical navigation errors, reported her tactical coordinator. The gravitational distortions are interfering with our quantum drives. 14 ships in the outer formation are already drifting off course. Time to minimum safe jump distance? At current acceleration. 19 minutes, Admiral. Zerion's voice cut through their calculations with devastating clarity. "I'm afraid you don't have 19 minutes. The Nexus drive is now at 73% expansion. At 90%, the quantum cascade becomes self-sustaining. That gives you approximately 90 seconds to decide whether the Velthari Infinite Armada will exist tomorrow." Kexathara's command staff exchanged glances that carried the weight of species-ending decisions. War leader Thekmajor, veteran of 63 successful campaigns, spoke first. "Admiral, this violates every principle of military engagement. No single vessel should possess the capability to threaten an entire fleet." And yet, Chief Navigator Yilketh observed quietly, "Here we are." The human ship continued its impossible transformation, sections of hull folding through dimensions that Velthari science insisted were purely theoretical. Energy readings fluctuated beyond their instruments' ability to measure, and the space around the vessel had begun to shimmer with aurora-like distortions that hurt to observe directly. 81%, announced Zerion's tactical officer. "Sir, I'm reading quantum resonance in the containment matrix. The substrate fragments are beginning to synchronize." Kexathara's mind raced through tactical options that seemed to evaporate as quickly as she could formulate them. A fighting retreat was impossible. Their weapons had proven completely ineffective. A coordinated assault would only accelerate their destruction. Attempting to ram the human vessel would likely trigger the very cascade they were trying to avoid. "Admiral," Communications Officer Zil Andra's voice carried unprecedented urgency. "I'm receiving priority transmissions from the Homeworld Council. They're demanding immediate situation reports." The thought of explaining this disaster to the High Arbiters made Kexathara's carapace crawl with anticipation of the political catastrophe that would follow. The Velthari had built their entire civilization on the presumption of military superiority. How could she possibly convey that a single human vessel had rendered their greatest fleet helpless? 87% expansion, came the relentless update. "Quantum containment fields showing stress fractures. I'm reading cascade initialization in the primary substrate matrix." "How long?" Kexathara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Has your species possessed this technology?" "The first Nexus drive was activated 43 years ago," Zerion replied. "We've built exactly 7 ships capable of carrying the substrate fragments. Each one represents a piece of our homeworld's quantum catastrophe, contained and compressed into a weapon we pray we'll never have to use. Why reveal this now? Why not deploy these ships when we first entered human space?" There was a pause before Zerion answered, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weariness that transcended species, barriers. "Because, Admiral, every time we activate a Nexus drive, we lose a little more of what made us human. The quantum substrate doesn't just destroy matter. It unravels the fundamental forces that allow consciousness to exist. Using this weapon doesn't just kill enemies, it eliminates them so completely that they never existed at all." The implications struck Kexathara like a physical blow. Not just death, but complete erasure from reality itself. No afterlife, no quantum consciousness transfer, no possibility of resurrection or recovery. Absolute annihilation. 90% expansion achieved, the human tactical officer announced. "Captain, The cascade is now self-sustaining. We have approximately 30 seconds before quantum containment failure. Admiral Kexathera looked at her fleet, at the crews who had followed her across the galaxy, at the civilization that had never known defeat. Then she looked at the impossible human ship that had made all their assumptions obsolete. "Fleet command to all vessels," she announced, her voice carrying across 800 years of military tradition. "Emergency withdrawal. All ships, maximum. Acceleration bearing 27 Mark 4. Execute immediately." The order that shattered Velthari pride rang across the void as the Infinite Armada turned and fled. The sight of the Velthari Infinite Armada in full retreat was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Ships that had conquered star systems, wheeled through space with desperate urgency, their crystalline hulls catching the light of distant stars as they accelerated beyond safe operational limits. Behind them, the Pandora's Gift hung in space like a dimensional wound, its impossible geometry continuing to expand even as the cascade process approached the point of no return. Captain Zerion watched the alien fleet's withdrawal through instruments that could barely process what they were seeing. The Nexus drive had reached 94% expansion, and the quantum substrate fragments were resonating with harmonics that made reality itself seem fragile. "Captain," Chief Engineer Mordane's voice carried barely controlled panic. "I'm reading cascade initiation in sectors 7 through 12. The containment fields are holding, but I don't know for how long." "Fleet withdrawal status?" Zerion asked, his weathered hands steady despite the magnitude of their situation. Navigator Keyleth consulted his instruments with the focused intensity of someone calculating the difference between extinction and survival. "Lead elements of the Velthari fleet have achieved minimum safe distance. Trailing vessels are still accelerating, but—" He paused, running calculations that would determine the fate of thousands. "Sir, the rear guard won't clear the potential cascade zone. For another 4 minutes." Zerion's gray eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the fleeing armada. The Velthari ships were pushing their drives beyond recommended limits, their desperate flight creating energy signatures that spoke of crews who finally understood what they were running from. He thought of Admiral Kexathera, whose decision to retreat had likely saved both their species from mutual annihilation. 96% expansion, Lieutenant Vexandra reported. "Sir, the quantum matrix is approaching critical instability. If we don't begin emergency containment procedures—" "How long can we hold the cascade?" Zerion interrupted. Mordane's voice came through the engineering channel with the precision of someone who understood the mathematics of reality. "At current expansion rate, maybe 6 minutes before the containment fields collapse entirely. But, Captain, the longer we hold it, the more unstable the substrate becomes. If this thing goes critical while we're still in normal space—" The implications hung unspoken between them. A cascade failure within a solar system wouldn't just consume planets. It would create a quantum scar that would make the region uninhabitable for millennia. The fragments of broken space-time would continue to expand until they either burned themselves out or encountered another gravitational mass large enough to contain them. "Captain Kydell," Admiral Kexathera's voice cut through the tension, transmitted from her flagship as it raced toward the system's edge. "I must ask, can you contain the cascade?" Zerion activated the communications array, his voice carrying the weight of decisions that would echo across galactic history. "Admiral, the Nexus drive was designed with emergency protocols. We can force the containment fields to collapse inward, compressing the quantum substrate back into stable dimensions. But, the compression process requires the ship to translate into quantum space. The Pandora's Gift and her crew would essentially cease to exist in normal reality. We would become part of the substrate matrix, our consciousness integrated into the quantum framework that keeps this weapon contained." The communications channel fell silent as the implications sank in. Not just death, but a transformation into something fundamentally different. Guardians of broken reality, forever maintaining the barriers that kept dimensional chaos from consuming. The galaxy. How many of these weapons did you say your species has built? HFY asked quietly. 7 ships, Admiral. 7 crews who volunteered to carry fragments of our homeworld's quantum catastrophe. 7 groups of humans who accepted that someday they might need to make the ultimate sacrifice to prevent their own weapon from destroying everything they were trying to protect. 98% expansion, Vexandra announced. Captain, cascade initiation is spreading through the entire substrate matrix. We need to make a decision. Through the view screen, Zarion could see the last of the Velthari vessels accelerating toward safety, their crews probably calculating whether they would survive the next few minutes. Behind them, space itself seemed to be unraveling as the Nexus drive approached the point where quantum mechanics and reality parted company. All stations, Zarion announced to his crew, prepare for quantum translation. Mordain, initiate compression sequence on my mark. Vexandra, signal the fleet that we're about to attempt containment. His crew responded with calm professionalism that spoke of months of preparation for this moment. They had always known this day might come. From the moment they volunteered for the Nexus Drive program, they had accepted that their mission might require them to sacrifice their existence in normal space. Admiral HFY, Zarion spoke into the communications array, consider this humanity's gesture of good faith. We could have let the cascade expand, knowing that your fleet's destruction would ensure our species' safety. Instead, we choose to risk everything to prevent unnecessary death. As the Pandora's gift began its final transformation, the fleeing Velthari ships bore witness to something unprecedented in galactic history, a species choosing to save their enemies at the cost of their own existence. The quantum translation began with a sound that existed in dimensions beyond normal hearing, a resonance that touched the consciousness directly, bypassing the ears entirely. Throughout the Pandora's gift, Captain Zarion's crew felt reality shift around them as their ship prepared to step outside the normal flow of existence. Quantum translation at 15%, Chief Engineer Mordain announced, his voice already carrying the ethereal quality that accompanied dimensional phase shifting. All substrate containment fields responding normally. Crew, you should be experiencing some disorientation as we begin to exist partially outside normal space-time. Lieutenant Vexandra's tactical station flickered between dimensions as she monitored the cascade containment. Sir, the compression field is holding. Quantum substrate is responding to inward pressure, but I'm reading massive energy fluctuations throughout the matrix. Through the increasingly translucent view screen, Captain Zarion watched the Velthari fleet reach minimum safe distance. Admiral, HFY's flagship had joined the rear guard, refusing to abandon the slower vessels, even as the quantum cascade threatened to consume them all. The gesture spoke of a military honor that transcended species boundaries. 30% translation, Mordain reported. Captain, I'm beginning to perceive the quantum substrate directly. It's beautiful. Terrifying, but beautiful. Like seeing the underlying mathematics that hold reality together. Zarion nodded, feeling the changes in his own consciousness, as parts of his awareness began to exist in quantum space. The universe seemed to become both larger and smaller simultaneously, with every atom revealing itself as a complex dance of probability waves and quantum interactions. Admiral HFY, he transmitted through communication systems that were becoming increasingly ethereal. The compression is working. The cascade is being contained. But I need you to understand something about what comes next. Explain, Captain, came the Admiral's response, though her voice seemed to reach them from across dimensional barriers. The humans who volunteer for Nexus Drive duty don't just disappear when we translate into quantum space. We become part of the containment system, our consciousness integrated into the quantum matrix that keeps these fragments stable. We'll continue to exist, but in a form that can maintain eternal vigilance over the broken pieces of reality we carry. The ship around them had become something between solid matter and pure energy, its hull translucent enough to reveal the cosmic backdrop while maintaining sufficient coherence to protect its crew during the translation process. 50% translation, Mordain announced. The substrate fragments are achieving stable compression. Captain, I'm beginning to see patterns. The quantum mathematics of what destroyed our homeworld. It's not random destruction, there's an underlying structure to it. Navigator Keyleth's voice carried wonder and terror in equal measure. Sir, I can perceive dimensional space directly now. The distances between stars, the gravitational relationships between galaxies. It's all connected. Everything in the universe is part of one vast quantum web. 70% translation achieved, Vexandra reported. Cascade containment is successful. The quantum substrate has been compressed back into stable dimensional boundaries, but... What, Lieutenant? Sir, the compression has created something new. The substrate isn't just contained, it's been transformed into a kind of quantum anchor, a fixed point in space-time that will prevent dimensional instabilities from forming in this region of the galaxy. Through the communications array, Admiral Kexathara's voice reached them like an echo from the world they were leaving behind. Captain, Kydell, my science officers report that space around your vessel has become stable. More stable than normal vacuum. What have you done? We've turned our homeworld's catastrophe into something useful, Zarion replied, his voice beginning to harmonize with frequencies that existed in multiple dimensions. The quantum substrate that nearly destroyed Earth is now serving as a foundation for reality itself. This region of space will be more stable, more resistant to dimensional anomalies, more hospitable to life than it was before. 90% translation, Mordain announced. Captain, crew, it's time. We're about to step fully into quantum space. Our consciousness will be preserved, but will be responsible for maintaining the quantum barriers that keep this new stability intact. The bridge fell silent as 7 humans prepared to transcend the boundaries between matter and energy, between individual existence and cosmic responsibility. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing it might require the ultimate sacrifice, but none of them had anticipated that their sacrifice would become a gift to the galaxy itself. Translation complete, Mordain whispered. And the Pandora's gift became something more than a ship. It became a guardian of reality itself, crewed by consciousnesses that existed simultaneously in normal space and quantum dimensions. Behind them, the Velthari fleet watched in amazement as the region of space around the human ship began to shimmer with new stability, quantum forces aligning in patterns that would make future travel safer and dimensional experiments less likely to tear reality apart. The weapon had become a shield, and its crew had become eternal guardians of the peace they had died to create. 5. Years after the translation, Admiral Kexathara returned to the system where everything had changed. Her ship, the Infinite Sorrow, approached the coordinates where the Pandora's gift had made its final sacrifice, though detecting the human vessel required instruments that could perceive quantum dimensional interactions. The ship existed in a state between reality and possibility, its hull shimmering with energies that hurt to observe directly. Yet it was still there, still maintaining its eternal vigil over the quantum substrate that had once threatened to consume entire star systems. Admiral, her science officer reported, the dimensional stability in this region has increased by 37% since our last visit. Space-time curvature is within optimal parameters for both interstellar travel and civilian colonization. Whatever the humans accomplished here, it's still working. Kexathara nodded, her 6 eyes fixed on the translucent outline of the human ship. Any communication attempt successful? We've established limited contact. The crew's consciousness appears to be intact, though they exist in a state we can barely comprehend. They're aware of our presence and, Admiral, they're still protecting us. The communication channel opened with harmonics that seemed to resonate in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Captain Zerion's voice came through, changed but recognizable. "Admiral HFY, welcome back to what we've come to call the Sanctuary Zone." "Captain," HFY replied, her voice carrying the respect earned through shared crisis. "Status report. The quantum substrate remains stable. We've successfully contained 3 additional dimensional anomalies that formed in nearby systems, extending the zone of stability to encompass roughly 12 light-years. The mathematics suggest we can maintain this indefinitely, though we're learning new things about the nature of reality every day. The Velthari High Council has approved the establishment of a research station in this system," HFY announced. "With your permission, we'd like to study the stability effects and share our findings with other species. What you've created here, it could revolutionize our understanding of dimensional mechanics." "Permission granted, Admiral, but we have a request." "Name it." Lieutenant Vexandra's voice joined the conversation, her consciousness harmonizing with quantum frequencies. "We're not the only Nexus drive ship in human space. 6 others carry similar substrate fragments, and their crews have volunteered for the same mission. If dimensional instabilities threaten inhabited systems, we may need to coordinate with our sister ships to create additional sanctuary zones." "The galaxy would benefit from such protection," HFY acknowledged. "But what do you need from us?" "Simple," came Chief Engineer Mordane's voice, resonating with the authority of someone who had mastered the mathematics of broken reality. "Help us ensure that no other species has to face what we faced. The dimensional weapons that destroyed our homeworld, they were created through scientific hubris and the belief that reality could be manipulated without consequences." "Share what we've learned," added Navigator Kyleth. "The universe has fundamental laws for a reason. When species begin experimenting with dimensional manipulation, quantum tunneling, or zero-point energy extraction, they risk creating the same catastrophe that nearly destroyed Earth." Admiral HFY considered the implications. 7 human ships, each crewed by consciousnesses that had transcended normal existence to become guardians of dimensional stability. Each one a testament to a species that had learned from their own near extinction and chosen to protect others from the same fate. "The Velthari will establish the sanctuary protocols," she announced. "Any species engaging in dangerous dimensional research will be warned of the potential consequences. We'll share your story, Captain, and ensure that your sacrifice serves as both inspiration and caution." "Thank you, Admiral, but understand, we don't consider this a sacrifice. We've become something new, something more than we were. We exist in harmony with the fundamental forces of reality itself. We've gained perspective on the universe that no living being could achieve." Through the quantum dimensional interface, HFY could sense the vast consciousness that had once been 7 individual humans. They had become something unprecedented, not just artificial intelligence or uploaded consciousness, but a true synthesis of organic awareness and cosmic understanding. "The sanctuary zone continues to expand," Captain Zerion's voice carried, satisfaction that transcended dimensional boundaries. "Each year brings new stability, new safety for the species that call this region home. The weapon that nearly destroyed us has become the foundation for a peace that could last millennia." As the infinite sorrow prepared to leave the sanctuary zone, Admiral HFY took one final look at the Pandora's gift. The human ship continued its eternal patrol, its crew maintaining vigilance over forces that could unmake reality itself. The galaxy had been transformed not by conquest or diplomacy, but by the willingness of 7 humans to sacrifice their individual existence for the greater good. Their dangerous ship had become humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos, a reminder that even the most destructive forces could be transformed into instruments of protection. In the void between stars, the Guardians maintained their watch, ensuring that the mistakes of one species would never again threaten the safety of all others. The dangerous ship had become a beacon of hope, and its crew had achieved a form of immortality that no warrior could have imagined. They had become the eternal protectors of reality itself.